Counteroffensive. What are we talking about when we say the counteroffensive? And first off, there have already been Ukrainian counteroffensives. There were, after the whole Russian force, the drive on Kyiv was repelled and sent back. There was also fairly large offensives in Kharkiv and Kherson that took back significant territory compared to what Russia started out with. But with the counteroffensive, we're talking about a significant amount of tanks and so forth from Germany, especially, and of course the United States with Leopard 2s, Leopard 1, and vehicles like Bradleys and things like that that give an offensive capability. So this is a more NATO aligned weapons and vehicles, and this is several brigades of troops that have been trained elsewhere, like in Britain and elsewhere. And this is a force that what Zelensky chooses to do with it is the counteroffensive, because the expected drive is to take back some certain amount of territory. And Ukraine is tight-lipped on this, and there aren't any objectives spelled out other than overall objectives to take back all their territory and the Crimea and so forth. So this has started with we've already seen these troops and things like Leopard 2s committed to the fighting, and Bradleys are already in the fighting, and they are taking back territory, but the advance isn't necessarily what it's not the quick drive or anything that might have been expected, but it's very tough fighting right now, because it's still in the defensive lines of the Russians, and the Russians had just as much time to prepare for. They've expected a counteroffensive and have been preparing for some time, mining everything and sighting in positions and so on and so forth. And they're using certain things effectively. They have they can't so much fly over the lines and attack anything they want, but they can keep aircraft behind their lines that are nothing's really going to touch them, and they can hit advancing troops with glide bombs and helicopters and so forth. So you're talking about attacking with armored vehicles and so forth over minefields against the Russian army, and with significant tank traps and defensive positions. So effectively, people say you're going to grind away at those for however long. And on the map, it'll look like small progress for a while. And then when you achieve a breakout, you'll, then there'll be opportunity for quicker movements, and we'll see, where they might try to drive if there is a breakout. So far, so good. I mean, to an extent, it's not the most most of these brigades are not committed into the fighting. And maybe some expectation was that there would be a larger bombardment, and I myself would have expected as much. And you're seeing a lot of close combat and troops attacking into trenches and so forth. But I really think you should see more just massive artillery strikes and things like that. Like, they need to, in my opinion, they need to step it up with the ammunition support. If it's not there, I guess, or it could still be that there's a bigger attack waiting in the wings. And certainly there is most of the counteroffensive force is still not committed to the fighting and is effectively held in reserve for now. And if they keep committing troops piecemeal here and there, or if they go for a single big thrust for a huge breakout to take over like a large amount of territory, I think I think that's what should be done. And I don't think it's going to be beneficial to do like a broad front advance like in World War II, where the Allies kind of did that, but you don't have the same amount of guys and the same amount of material. The Russians definitely have. I mean, compared to Ukraine, they have more, and the Russians are not having debates about what weapons they should use, if they should cluster bomb cities or put minefields everywhere. They just go ahead and do it. So that's a significant advantage in itself, in that Ukraine really, I mean, without question, they need weapons from the West. And it's very strange for people to act like you don't, like the ammunition can't change things and more weapons won't change outcomes. But for troops, absolutely, you need more ammunition, and it's always a concern. And when you're running low on it, they're going to send a QRF to get you some, maybe by helicopter, to get you more. And they don't just tell you to make do or to scrounge for what you can find. Generally, logistics do contribute to battles, which is something people are arguing against, strangely. But I think it is becoming a problem in that the politics are maybe affecting the amount of military aid. It could be that Brandon's people are starting to get nervous about like a backlash if they keep on upping the amount of the stuff. I really think they should. I mean, they ought to just increase it. If I were them, but certainly if your opponents are pinning their fortunes on a battlefield loss, you might want to just go in for the big win and get the Ukrainians what they need. And it's definitely going to be something to counter the air and a very significant bombardment. With the Kharkiv offensive, I mean, it was earlier in the war, and the Ukrainians, and you saw a lot of footage even with foreign volunteers, and they're using tactics like kind of like the Marine like MAP or CAT, where they're just rushing with the Humvees with 50 cals and so forth, and a lot of people remark that it was very similar to ISIS tactics, which is true, and that was used in Mosul successfully to just basically just go in very quickly with all these vehicles just blazing with 50 cals, and everyone's keeping their heads down and so forth, even before, like, even ahead of the main force. And you're just moving in so quick that you kind of catch them with their pants down, and they learn from that, and now you see not just the dragon's teeth things, but the minefields and tank traps and so on and so forth, which is really going to bog your attack down in a huge way. Like, I mean, going into when we did the surge in Iraq, we pushed into the Islamic State of Iraq's territory, like in the Zaidan. This is Al Qaeda, their territory that they occupied. I mean, they had enough IEDs and that were, I mean, some landmines, and at the time they were using more victim actuated, like you step on it and it blows up without a trigger man being involved. So they were using a lot more of that, and we had before the infantry, like all our trucks moved in, they had the route clearance, and these route clearance units were like a hip load of armored vehicles that were just designed to blow up and really to detect IEDs, and to they could detonate them, or if they don't, then they should be good to go. Take a blast. And then, I mean, these guys would go ahead of us. These were like engineers and people who they just pulled from every unit to do this job, which is just drive ahead of all of our vehicles. And I mean, they would drive us in, and we would park our vehicles. We would like take a house, make a perimeter, and then we wouldn't drive anywhere we would walk everywhere for a few days, and then when we needed to drive again, we would route clearance would push out, and there were times where we would get stuck because these route clearance units would keep on they would blow up over and over trying to get to us, that they'd have to turn around. And so we'd be like stuck, and then we need helicopters for ammunition. But I mean, it makes a situation where it's very difficult to move around. There's just bombs everywhere, all over, and we're just talking Al Qaeda and putting bombs on the roads and stuff. This is kind of a whole nother scale, but you can see how these things can mess everything up. And I mean, I've been blown up by a few of these things, and it's just no joke. Where it's like Looney Tunes, where suddenly you're just in a bunch of wreckage and smoke. But just getting through all these minefields on top of like helicopters firing on you, you should be able to figure you might need more weaponry to deal with that. Even like in Korea, I got to walk along like the DMZ, like the 38th parallel, and actually I like shared a pair of binoculars with Colonel McCoy, Sergeant Major Howell, and I was there with the regimental headquarters, and we were just looking at like these minefields and tank traps and so forth, and I mean, talking about how you get across if it came to it. And I mean, it's like everyone's just you'd need the the biggest bombardment. The artillery and everything is just would just have to pop off in the biggest bombardment, like of all time, like a barrage, like it'd have to be something else. And I think if you're dealing with even just what's in Ukraine, where you have it's these Russians are digging deep and they're making these trench systems, and they're just putting everything into the defense. You need to up your game. You need a lot of weapons and material to do the job. I think the Ukrainians are probably not wanting to commit a huge force in one big swing, just in case. I mean, it's like it turns into like a Fredericksburg or something, like a huge disaster. And especially, I mean, tanks, they have a certain lifespan, and you're gonna take a certain amount of attrition just as the battle goes. So you don't know how many tanks are going to get replenished from Germany, from the United States, and from elsewhere. It's like if you have a huge force, but is it just a disposable force for the counteroffensive, or maybe you want to commit a bit at a time, just based on that, or maybe just to see how forthcoming more vehicles are. And I'm sure that there is another big attack waiting in the wings. I mean, so far so good. The Russian lines are I mean, they are going east. They are losing ground. It's just when you look at the attrition levels and the time, I mean, it's not the speed that you'd like to see. It's not the breakout that you're going for. And it could be that we're close, that these lines are getting brittle, and that their attrition is significantly higher. I mean, that is, there's different signs of this or that, and you can crunch different numbers, but a lot of that is there's not enough information to figure that out at this point. So far so good. I think that there are, I mean, just if you see the amount of like even the combat footage and things like that, the Ukrainians are attacking very well, and it's clear just from looking at them that they're good troops. I mean, you could tell just by how a troop stands and moves. You know, you can see that these are better stock than the Russian stock. Really, just from kind of looking, but the attacks they're definitely well done. But you're seeing so much like really close quarters combat. I almost kind of, you almost worry that there's too much, and it looks great. That there's never really been anything like a lot of this stuff. Like, because in the past, in World War II and you wouldn't really get a camera crew to and just expose themselves to the enemy to get like footage of, you don't see very much where that troops from both sides are in the same shot, and and they're still alive. Usually it's maybe at least somebody's dead, or so forth. But Syria was the first war where you started to see a lot more footage of like I mean, you would see like there'd just be footage even of someone just shooting another guy. Like you'd see the enemy on camera all the time. A lot of this footage is hard to find now. but it was definitely out there. It's out there somewhere. But now some of the stuff, I mean, we're putting weapons to the test, and we're seeing things that, like, all this kind of gear that we have and everything is really being, you can see how it's just being put to, it's getting it's getting maxed out in usage. I mean, it's getting the full use. But I mean, it's very much to just do those kind of attacks all the time is the rate of attrition will be very high. Like in Iraq, there wasn't even very much. There was maybe less close quarters battle than you might think, because if you're in a building and then you take shots from the building, like everyone's gonna bail and then blow the building up somehow with, a Mark 19 or a JDAM or so on and so forth. Nobody really wants to, get into this stuff if they don't have to. You don't. I would say maybe we looked at it more like it wasn't worth it, and we definitely had more options. And if you don't, I mean, we would get into the stuff, but you try everything not to. And there certainly wasn't anything like on camera at the time. People didn't have GoPros, and now you're seeing a lot of this stuff. And I mean, I'm like, you should just be able to blast those positions to pieces with. I mean, you can't do everything. At some point, the infantry has to close with and destroy. But I kind of I would like to see the barrages level up, and I just think that there is some kind of reticence to not do that. Just with all the politics going, is very unfortunate. It would create a loss for our country, as well as for it's obviously not doing any justice to our allies. Certainly, other people need to step it up too. The European countries, I mean, the ammunition is out there. It's not that we're running out. I mean, if this is such a weak country where we're already just running out of ammo right now, like it would have been like overthrown already or something. Or I mean, like you'd almost figure it would be, because you like it's so weak. It's not the weapon stockpiles are definitely out there. It's just a matter of committing them and then getting our own manufacturing. Obviously, one way or another, this should be a huge concern with getting more artillery shells. I'm definitely not telling you anything new with that. There's plenty of people who make the same remark. But I would definitely say that for the counteroffensive, unless that there's still a significant, unless something really spectacular is already waiting in the wings, or unless the enemy lines are ready to collapse, I would say we maybe need to commit more, like something kind of spectacular. Certainly, at this point, the Kerch Bridge in the Crimea should already just be blown. I'm not. I don't mean to play armchair general. I don't think a lot of what I'm saying is up to dispute. I'm just trying to kind of. Well, I'm just saying that's about my thoughts on it. And as this goes on, I'll give sit reps if there's anything controversial to discuss, and any further big developments. But there's been kind of a lull where things have kind of settled into a certain pace, and the pace isn't like, I don't know. The Ukrainians really don't say anything about this stuff, and I'm sure people wouldn't appreciate just anybody saying anything, but you figure there's enough people out there. I mean, the Russians will say a lot of stuff. The Russians, for their part, in every attack, I mean, they just obliterate everything because their bombardment is famously heavy. And even if they can't say coordinate attacks like their big drive on Kiev, it's a failure. They can't conduct that kind of maneuver warfare, but they can just pound everything with artillery. I mean, the same way that they won in World War II and so forth, and where it's just these like unstoppable, just a wave of artillery. I mean, but then when that slows down or something more or less checks that, they'll say that they're moving slow for civilian casualties, to like avoid civilian casualties, and give all these kinds of excuses. It's super clear that's not happening. It's not even it's not even a really good idea, and you could see like dragging a war out indefinitely isn't a humanitarian thing. Like Russians will say like will act like it's somehow Russians are like dragging this out on purpose, like a scientifically, methodically, at like this slow pace that Westerners think that you should move fast, but you should move slow. That I mean that's called the cope, and no, you want to move fast. It's just better all around. The counteroffensive right now is moving slow. It's not the end of the world, but there's no point in like kidding ourselves or something, or like like people should just figure this is a tough. I mean, this is a tough battle. It's a tough war to fight. It's bad enough like there's however many people, even when it's going great, are only trying to pretend like it isn't. But we'll see. I'm just trying to give you reality. Like right now, the counteroffensive has more or less started. There's a certain amount of brigades committed to the fighting. There've been heavy losses, but there's still a lot more to come. However that goes, however they decide to do that. But I personally think that there should be a very large committed attack. I don't know how far you want to get. Like, I'd like to see it go the farthest it can. I figure we've probably got a year to do this. We might have years. We might have years to do this, even if Trump says he's going to stop the whole thing. Obviously, he's probably lying. So there could be years, but by all means, I think that this should not become a war of attrition. And when people say it's a war of attrition, this is defeatist language. It should is, we want to turn this into a war of maneuver, and we want a big breakout, and I mean that's what we're waiting for. I think the Ukrainians are doing great. It's just very, very tough fighting. The Russians are not laying down. I mean, it's not like they're just a joke force, like, completely. Like, I would say that Russians are not. I mean, individually, you wouldn't say that, like, they're, I don't know, just, like, all combined, what they do. You even see, like, where they're just, if you just throw however many convicts, or you just draft people and you just throw them right at the front lines, and you just hit artillery, everything. It's you could say that it's very simple and brutal, and the Russians have a really brutal way of warfare, where they just purposely kill everything, just bombard uh, cities and try to kill as many civilians until the country surrenders, and then so on and so forth. It's not a big joke of an enemy that's going to be a big pushover. This is, I mean, people are very foolish on both sides when they just say, like, you know, Ukraine will win, or Russia will win, or you don't. No one's guaranteed to win. If Russia is gonna, like, people say, Elon Musk or so, Russia will inevitably win. But it, they would have won already. Like, if Russia would inevitably win, they would have already won already. They'd already take over the whole Ukraine. They'd be in Kiev. I mean, like, beyond that, it's called fighting. It's not just a matter of who has more stuff, or there's a lot of big countries who have big militaries too, but that stuff will never get, like, turned into anything. Like, it won't like challenge. I mean, the numbers aren't really gonna mean anything if like, let's say they challenge the United States. It'll have a proportionately, like, it'll have, like, exponentially, like, less of an effect against a superior foe like that. But just these people aren't going to just get it together and just create some, like, coordinated uh, maneuvering attack. There's a lot involved. It is combined arms. So I think that there's just a few parts of the combined arms package that are lacking. And I mean, it looks like the infantry is doing great, but like I said, I worry that there's too much of it. So I'd like to see if those guys could just call for fire, maybe a little bit more. And I mean, it's just a matter of committing the aid, getting the ammunition where it needs to go. And I find this to be an issue that people will change their minds on. Maybe unfortunately both ways, but hopefully things can kind of turn around. Not have this kind of politics where it is kind of hampering things. I hope Brandon just drowns it out and just keeps up the weapons. I mean, obviously, but we'll see. If he does, good. That's good on him. I think that'd be great. But that's the counteroffensive for now.